Imagine a man who fought alone for 20 years, watched every human being on Earth die around him, and then sacrificed his own life to kill the monster that ended it all, only to wake up in a high school hallway getting shoved around by 4 teenagers. That's where this story starts, and that's the least insane thing that happens. Before we rewind, let's talk about what's waiting for you. A corrupt guildmaster who poisons his own hunters like livestock gets a taste of his own medicine, literally, and then gets thrown out a window. An undercover assassin thinks she's the most dangerous person in the dungeon, right up until our guy exposes her brand in front of everyone and leaves her to the horde. A newborn dragon hatches in the middle of an S-rank exam, and the most powerful beast tamer alive watches his fully grown dragon bow down to it. And somewhere in Los Angeles, a celebrity actor transforms into a half-dragon in the middle of his own guild headquarters and still loses. All of that is coming. But first, let's go back to the beginning. His name is Kim Sung-gin, or it was. The world that name belonged to no longer exists. He was humanity's last warrior. The final awakened fighter standing on a dead planet, surrounded by ruins where cities used to be. Monsters had consumed everything. Every government, every guild, every person he'd ever known, gone. And Sung-gin had kept fighting anyway, floor by floor, dungeon by dungeon, alone, for years, until there was nothing left to protect and nobody left to mourn. Just him and the monster sovereign Fafnir, a creature so catastrophically powerful it had personally ended human civilization. The final battle wasn't heroic. It was just 2 things trying to kill each other, and one of them succeeded. Fafnir won. Sung-gin died. End of history. Except, he wakes up. Not in a hospital, not in an afterlife. He wakes up mid-fall, stumbling back against a row of school lockers, staring at 4 boys in uniforms, who are clearly mid-sentence telling him they're going to beat him up. His hands are shaking, not from fear, but because they're small, soft. The hands of someone who has never swung a weapon in his life. He has the combat instincts of a man who slaughtered thousands of monsters, and the body of a 17-year-old who probably can't do 10 push-ups. The bullies keep talking. He barely hears them. He's looking at his hands. He's looking at the ceiling, he's looking at the window, and the daylight coming through it like it's the most incredible thing he's ever seen. Because the last sky he stood under was ash gray and silent and smelled like death. One of the boys shoves him. Old muscle memory fires instantly. His hand catches the shove, rotates, and redirects it in a single motion that sends the kid pinwheeling sideways into the opposite wall. The remaining 3 stare. He stares at his own hand. Okay, so the body is weak. The reflexes, apparently, are not. A mirror down the hallway shows him a face he doesn't recognize. Kim Soo-hyun, 19 years old, high school student. And there's something else. When he reaches for his system, the awakened interface that every fighter uses to track their rank and abilities, it's dormant, blank, not broken, just never activated. He hasn't been registered as an awakened fighter in this timeline. He hasn't done anything yet. He runs a quick mental check against what he knows. The year is 2022, which means he hasn't just regressed into a younger body. He's gone back 20 years before the apocalypse, before the worst outbreaks, before most of the catastrophic events that ended everything. He has the memories. He knows what's coming, when it's coming, and in many cases, exactly who causes it. And the name Kim Sung-gin, the legendary warrior, the sole survivor, the anonymous tower climber that nobody could identify, doesn't exist in this timeline, because that man never got the chance to exist here. The version of this body's original owner was ordinary, unremarkable. He wouldn't have climbed the tower at maximum difficulty, wouldn't have accumulated the experience and stolen abilities and heartbreak that turned Sung-gin into what he became. So this is the deal. He has 20 years of apocalyptic combat memory in a fragile, untrained body, no rank, no registration, and a planet full of disasters he already watched happen once. He is not doing that again. The first piece falls into place that evening. He's walking home, still processing, still mapping out priorities in his head, when something erupts from an alley. A werewolf. Big, fast, mana-fueled, and absolutely not supposed to be loose in a residential neighborhood. These things don't wander, they hunt. It locks onto him immediately, because of course it does, and before he can properly account for the fact that his current body has the stamina of a wet napkin, a woman is stepping between him and the wolf. His new mother, the woman whose son's body he now occupies. She's not an awakened fighter, she doesn't have a weapon. She throws herself in front of a monster that could snap her in half because her son is behind her and she isn't moving. Sungin has fought thousands of battles. He has been betrayed, manipulated, used as a tool, and watched every person he loved die. His original mother raised him from childhood on the doctrine that he existed to be sacrificed, that his life was not his own, that his pain didn't matter, that his only value was in being the last line between humanity and extinction. He internalized that completely. He became exactly what she trained him to be, an empty weapon that didn't know how to want anything for itself. The woman standing in front of that wolf has never said any of those things. She just stepped forward. He kills the wolf. It's not even a contest. Combat instinct overrides the body's limitations, and it's over in seconds. But he stands there afterward looking at her, and something cracks open in him that he doesn't have a word for yet. He files it away. He has work to do. The tower calls him 3 days later. The Tower of Trials isn't a physical location exactly. It's an intrusion of another dimension into reality, accessible through portals that appear in designated zones. Every awakened fighter has to enter eventually to register their rank, train their abilities, and harvest resources. The system is well known. Most people enter at the lowest difficulty and work their way up carefully over months, even years. Difficulty level 1 is survivable for beginners. Difficulty level 10 is for people who want to die faster than normal. Sungin selects level 10 for floor 1 and walks in. The floor deploys a standard entry scenario: a field, enemies, objectives, a boss. On level 10, the enemies are dramatically stronger, the boss has expanded abilities, and the rewards scale accordingly. Most experienced hunters avoid level 10 because the gap between normal difficulty and maximum difficulty isn't just hard, it's a completely different class of combat. Sungin clears it like he's taking a walk. His body struggles to keep up, gasping and shaking and burning through energy at an alarming rate, but his technique is 20 years ahead of anything this floor can throw at him. He reads every attack pattern, exploits every opening, and finishes the boss without taking a serious hit. The reward screen explodes. Maximum difficulty bonuses stack onto completion bonuses, stack onto first clear bonuses. His system activates properly for the first time, and the stat multipliers are staggering, far beyond what any C or B rank beginner accumulates in a first trial. He has enough achievement points to buy almost anything in the system shop, and he knows exactly what he wants. The merchant who appears is a dark elf, a rare NPC type associated with high difficulty floors, and she has the practiced boredom of someone who has seen 10,000 hunters come through with barely enough points to buy a basic skill scroll. She does not have the practiced boredom of someone prepared for Sungin to drop 1,150 points like it means nothing and start browsing her top-tier catalog. Her expression does something complicated. He buys the Transmutation skill, a stack of high-grade mana catalysts, and walks out without explaining himself. Transmutation is the ability that made him what he was in the last timeline. It lets him replicate traits and skills from monsters he defeats, not copying them exactly, but absorbing the essence of their abilities and transmuting them into something he can use. Combined with proficiency, which grows abilities through repetition, it means every boss he kills is potentially a permanent upgrade. It's not flashy, it's the single most broken thing in the tower system if you're good enough to survive long enough to stack it. He's very good, he's survived very long. Floor 2, maximum difficulty. The boss this time is the Cheryl Race Queen, a creature that most hunters at this level wouldn't touch without a full party and a plan. Sungin does it solo. The fight is harder than floor 1, the body's limitations become more apparent, and he has to burn through physical reserves he doesn't have yet. But he kills her, and the reward includes something that changes his long-term strategy. A Cheryl healing treasure, 5 charges, capable of curing almost any ailment or injury. 5 charges. He already knows where each one goes. He has a list. He also runs into a kid on floor 2, 17 years old, lanky, carrying a sword too big for him, with the kind of raw talent that's obvious the moment you watch him move. Hak Jun Choi. In the previous timeline, Hak Jun became one of the most gifted swordsmen of his generation, and then was destroyed by a guildmaster who got hooks into him through blackmail and poison, turned him into a weapon, and eventually drove him to slaughter his own teammates. Sungin watched it happen. Couldn't stop it. He looks at this kid with his oversized sword and his clumsy footwork and his obvious potential and thinks, not this time. He doesn't say anything. Not yet. They're strangers. But he notes the name, notes the face, and moves on. The next year is a grind. Floors 3 through 9, maximum difficulty, every single one. His body transforms under the combined pressure of tower trials and mana catalyst injections. Catalysts are substances that forcibly accelerate mana development, burning through the natural growth ceiling that would otherwise cap him for years. They're expensive, they're uncomfortable, they work. By the time he hits Floor 9's exit, Soo-hyun's soft, civilian physique is gone. The mana running through his system is dense, refined, operating at a tier that has nothing to do with his official rank. He has accumulated boss traits, skill levels, and combat experience that most S-rank hunters would recognize as belonging to someone at their level. Nobody outside the tower knows any of this. His registration still reads as blank, unranked, unaffiliated, a civilian who hasn't officially entered the Awakened system. He's doing that on purpose. The longer he goes unregistered, the more freedom he has to move without the Awakened Association watching. Floor 10 changes the math. Every 10th floor in the tower is a milestone. Difficulty spikes, the trial becomes narrative in structure, and the rewards escalate to match. Floor 10 is built around a village, a community of people living inside the tower's constructed reality, ruled by a town leader who has cultivated a reputation as the village's protector, its holy figure, its last line of defense against the threats outside. It takes Sungin approximately 20 minutes of investigation to confirm that the town leader is a fraud. The man has been feeding his own citizens to a giant serpent that lives in the valley below the village. Not fighting it, not managing it, feeding it. Offering up people labeled as sacred sacrifices in elaborate rituals that he's convinced the town represents spiritual honor, while actually just keeping the serpent satisfied enough not to attack. It's a protection racket dressed up in robes and ceremony. The citizens believe their leader is a hero. The leader knows exactly what he is. Sungin is not patient with this kind of thing. He exposes the operation in front of the village, pulls the curtain, shows the evidence, makes the fraud visible and undeniable, and then recruits the villagers directly. Not to cheer him on, to fight. He teaches them, shows them how to read the serpent's patterns, how to use the terrain, how to work as a unit. He doesn't want to be their new savior figure. He wants them to not need a savior figure. Then he kills the serpent. The ancient snake dies hard. It's a genuine boss-tier creature, scaled for level 10 floor 10, and even with his accumulated skills it takes everything he has to put it down cleanly. The Cheryl treasure takes a charge to cover the injuries. Worth it, but the floor isn't done. The holy bird of blue flame descends after the serpent dies. It's the floor's true capstone challenge, a divine tier creature wreathed in sacred fire that burns through conventional defenses like paper. It also targets the newly motivated, freshly armed villagers who are all standing in the open. Sungin uses transmutation mid-combat, processing the flame's properties while fighting the bird directly, and acquires the holy flame's skill, a sacred fire technique that the Cheryl treasure helps stabilize during the transfer. The bird dies. The villagers survive. Melly, a young kid who'd been one of the first to volunteer when Sungin asked for fighters, watches the whole thing with enormous eyes. Sungin picks up the legendary beast egg that the floor rewards as a hidden bonus. He has no idea exactly when it'll hatch. He knows it will be worth it. The Awakened Association facility, where hunters officially register their rank, is a standard bureaucratic building dressed up with importance. Rank assessment is done through controlled mana output tests. The machine measures what you push through it and assigns a grade accordingly. This is easily gamed if you know what you're doing. Soo-hyun deliberately throttles his output and registers as C rank. The examiner doesn't question it. Why would they? He's a 19-year-old with no guild affiliation and no raid history. C rank is unremarkable, exactly what he wants to be. Hakjun registers the same day, B rank. The association people are more interested in him. B rank at his age is genuinely notable, and the Ares Guild already has a representative in the building with a contract waiting. Sungin watches the recruiter approach Hakjun and clocks the guild badge. Ares Guild. Dongyong Jung's operation. He makes a note to handle that eventually. The Ares Guild approaches him too, as a formality. He meets Dongyong Jung briefly. A compact man with a professional smile and eyes that assess everything in terms of asset value. Sungin declines politely. Dong-young doesn't push. He's not worried about a C rank. He should be. Instead of joining a guild, Sungin tracks down a different name from his past life memories, Daeho Kim, the greatest living weaponsmith, a craftsman whose work in the previous timeline had produced the holy sword that Sungin had carried through the apocalypse. He finds Daeho's workshop, introduces himself, and commissions a sword. Not just any sword, a dragon-slaying blade. The commission requires a high-grade ether stone as the core material, which is absurdly expensive, but Sungin has the points and the resources from a year of maximum difficulty tower clearing. He places the order and leaves Daeho looking quietly interested in a way that suggests the old man recognizes quality when he sees it. The blade is named Graham before it's even finished. Sungin already knows what it's going to cut. The boss signature is massive. Not just in size, in presence. The dungeon's mana displacement radiates outward from it like pressure, the kind of atmospheric weight that makes lesser awakeners instinctively take a step back before they've consciously processed why. The ACT team members who fought their way to the outer ring of the outbreak are holding position. Professional fighters, all of them, and they're holding position. Egolas arrives. Half-dragon. Not a full dragon. Those are continental catastrophe tier, the kind of entity that rewrites geography. A half-dragon is something in between. The physical architecture of a dragon compressed into a form that can move through urban environments, with the draconic defenses, breath weapons, and mana density intact. Its scales absorb conventional weapon strikes. Its speed is wrong for something that size. It moves faster than the eye wants to track, faster than the brain wants to accept given the mass involved. Soo-hyun rides his holy flame phoenix into the air to meet it. The AC team watches from below. Whatever their operational assessment of the masked terrorist was 30 minutes ago, it's being revised in real time. You don't ride a sentient phoenix into a half-dragon encounter unless your threat tier is substantially above what the paperwork says. He has Graham. He has the holy flames. He has a year and a half of maximum difficulty tower clears stacked into his mana reserves and reflex memory. Egolas is still the hardest thing he's fought in this timeline, and the fight shows it. The half-dragon is faster than predicted. Its breath weapon has a wider spread than his floor knowledge suggested. The dungeon difficulty scaling pushes boss parameters beyond their baseline, and Egolas is performing at the top of its range. He takes hits, real ones, the kind that crack ribs and scramble his vision and send him tumbling off the phoenix's back for 300 feet before he rights himself. He keeps going. Gungnir appears in his hands, a legendary spear drawn from his item inventory, a weapon he's been holding specifically for this fight. Not Graham. Graham is for what comes after. Gungnir is for finding the core, the structural center of Egolas's draconic mana concentration, the place where all that power is rooted. He reads the fight, reads the movement patterns, reads the breath cycle timing, and when Egolas commits to a full-body lunge, Soo-hyun doesn't dodge sideways. He goes straight in. The spear drives into Egolas's core. The creature's systems go haywire. The mana concentration destabilizes, the physical defenses flicker, the coordination between its draconic and humanoid aspects breaks down. And then, with the timing that only an entity this size can produce, its jaws close around Soo-hyun. He's swallowed. Inside a half-dragon is not a comfortable environment. It's dark, it's burning with residual mana fire, and the physical pressure of the creature's internal cavity is doing things to his body that the word damage doesn't quite cover. His health drops. Fast. Critical threshold approaching. The hero immortality trait fires. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for a command. The moment his health crashes past the fail-safe line, the trait activates automatically, and his body begins rebuilding itself from the inside out. Bones knitting, tissue regenerating, mana circuits re-establishing connections that were severed seconds ago. The pain is extraordinary. He notes it the way you note weather. He finds his footing in the dark. His hands locate Egolas's jaws from the inside, the hinge point of the creature's mouth, the structural weak point that exists in every draconic anatomy he's ever studied. He gets his hands into position. He pushes. The jaw tears open from inside. He walks out covered in half-dragon internal matter and lands on the street below in a crouch. Egolas shudders, destabilizes, and collapses. The crash shakes the ground for 2 blocks. The AC team is completely silent. The silence lasts about 4 seconds. Then someone says something into a radio that will eventually become a very interesting incident report. From the wreckage of Egolas, something releases. Not physically, dimensionally. A presence that has been trapped inside the half-dragon for what the tower's lore suggests is centuries. The spirit of Falcon, an ancient knight who was fused into the creature long ago, his consciousness imprisoned in the draconic form and unable to separate. Every blow landed on Egolas, landed on Falcon too. Every year of the creature's existence was a year of that entrapment. The spirit materializes briefly, enough for Soo-hyun to see him. An old soldier, tired in the way that only centuries of helplessness can produce. He looks at Soo-hyun, and the exhaustion in his face shifts into something else. Relief, the pure, devastating relief of someone who stopped hoping and then had hope return without warning. Soo-hyun says nothing. There's nothing that needs saying. He just holds the moment while Falcon's spirit begins to dissolve into something quieter and permanent. The armor that materializes in the aftermath is divine grade, Falcon's gift, left behind when his spirit passes on. It settles around Soo-hyun's shoulders with the comfortable weight of something that was made for a specific person, even if that person is a different person than the one who originally wore it. He drops the mask. Not dramatically, he just takes it off and holds it. The ACT team can see his face now. They don't know his name yet, but they will. What he doesn't know is that two separate threads are about to tangle in a way that's going to force his hand earlier than planned. Hak Jun Choi is in trouble. The genius swordsman he clocked on floor 2, the kid with the oversized sword and the obvious talent, joined the Ares Guild after his B-rank certification because that was the natural pipeline and nobody told him what was waiting inside it. Dong Yong-jung is patient. He doesn't spring his traps immediately. He lets people settle in, build loyalty, start to feel like the guild is home. And then, once they've stopped paying attention to the exits, he shows them the hook. The hook, in Hakjun's case, is Yuin. Yuin Guak is Hakjun's girlfriend, childhood sweetheart, the kind of bond that forms before either person knows who they are, and then deepens because the people they become still fit together. She's been sick. Not dramatically, not terminally in the conventional sense, but persistently. An illness that conventional medicine hasn't resolved and that keeps her from recovering fully regardless of treatment. What nobody except Dong Yong knows is that the illness is not natural. She's been poisoned. Slowly, deliberately, with a compound that mimics a progressive degenerative condition. The poison is Dong Yong's proprietary weapon. He has the only antidote, and he hasn't mentioned that he's the one who put it in her system. He waits until Hak Jun is settled in the guild and then arranges a conversation. The structure is simple. Hak Jun does what Dong Yong tells him to do, or Yuin doesn't receive the medicine she apparently needs to survive. And if Hak Jun ever speaks to anyone outside the guild about the arrangement, the medicine stops immediately. This is how Dong Yong collects people. Not through contracts or ideology, through someone they love. In the previous timeline, this mechanism had driven Hak Jun to the point of psychological collapse. He'd been ordered to do things that violated everything he believed, had endured months of degradation, and had finally broken in the worst possible way. The poison that kept Yuan alive had also destroyed him. He'd turned the violence inward on his own guild eventually, with catastrophic results. Soo-hyun is not watching that happen again. What he doesn't anticipate is Hak Jun coming to him first. The Anyang incident has made Soo-hyun visible. Not identified, not yet, but the masked fighter who evacuated 600,000 people and then walked out of a half-dragon is generating the kind of attention that makes people want to find him. Hak Jun finds him through guild channels and hunting party rosters and the general information network that B-rank hunters move through. He comes to Soo-hyun with a sword, not a conversation, not a question. He comes with genuine attack intent, because Dong Yong has given him an objective and told him what happens if he doesn't complete it, and Hak Jun is desperate enough and cornered enough that he's decided to do this terrible thing rather than watch Yuin die. He's crying while he does it. The sword swings are technically excellent, his talent is real, his training is real, and technically completely outclassed. Soo-hyun stops every attack without drawing his own weapon. He doesn't hurt Hak Jun, he just neutralizes the attempts until Hak Jun runs out of momentum, and then he waits. Hak Jun breaks, not suddenly, gradually, the way a person breaks when they've been holding something unbearable for too long and someone finally stops moving away from it. He tells Soo-hyun everything. The poison, Yuin, the months of orders and compliance, and the feeling of being owned by a man he despises. Soo-hyun listens. Then he asks one question. Where does Dong-yong keep the medicine? The answer is, he doesn't. There is no external medicine. The treatment Yuan has been receiving is just regular medical appointments that Dong-yong arranged and claimed credit for. The actual cure requires addressing the poison itself, which is still in her system, still slowly progressing, and which only Dong-yong's antidote can neutralize. Soo-hyun visits Yuan at the hospital. She's pale and quietly determined in the way people get when they've been sick long enough to make peace with uncertainty. She has good instincts about people. She doesn't know what to make of this stranger who arrived with Hakjun looking like he already has a plan, but she can tell he's not performing concern. He's actually concerned. He checks the Cheryl treasure. 3 charges remaining. He uses one on her. Not the full purification, just enough diagnostic contact to confirm the poison's composition and verify that the Cheryl purification energy can interact with it. It can, but he needs Dong-yong to first neutralize the active compound before the Cheryl charge can finish the job cleanly. Otherwise, the body's reaction to the sudden removal could be as dangerous as the poison itself. He needs Dong-yong to cure Hakjun and start the process on Yuan, and he needs to be in the Aries Guild headquarters to make that happen. So he calls the guild and tells them he'd like to discuss membership. Dong-yong receives this news with professional warmth. A hunter of Soo-hyun's apparent tier, the masked fighter from Anyang is being traced, and the descriptions match. Joining Aries Guild would be a significant asset. He schedules the meeting personally. The Aries Guild headquarters is a well-appointed building that communicates power through furniture and lighting rather than anything as obvious as weapons. Dong-yong meets Soo-hyun in a conference room with a contract already prepared. He's done his homework. He knows Soo-hyun cleared the Gwangju dungeon with Juho's party. He suspects Soo-hyun might be the Anyang incident figure. He's chosen to treat this as an opportunity rather than a threat, because in his model of the world, everyone eventually has a price. Soo-hyun sits across from him and is pleasant and engaged, and asks reasonable questions about guild structure and resource sharing, and the entire time he is cataloging everything in the room: exits, security positions, the location of the safe he spotted during the building walk-in, the slight delay in Dong-yong's left-hand gesture that suggests something implanted in the forearm. A toxin delivery mechanism, almost certainly. Dong-yong doesn't sit across from powerful strangers without a backup plan. The contract materializes. Soo-hyun picks it up, reads it, sets it down. Then he uses transmutation. Not to attack, to copy. Transmutation's ability to replicate traits from monsters extends, with sufficient mana control and contact, to certain biological compounds produced by humanoid awakeners who have integrated toxin abilities into their physiology. Dong-yong has been using his poison long enough that it's become partially systemic, a biological function, not just an administered substance. Soo-hyun leans forward slightly during the handshake portion of the contract discussion, makes the brief physical contact he needs, and quietly copies the poison compound's structure. He now knows exactly what it is. More importantly, he now knows exactly how to synthesize it. And he knows that transmutation can work in reverse, not just copying, but forcing a substance to express in a specific direction. He smiles at Dong-yong and signs the contract. Then he tells Dong-yong, conversationally, that he'd like the antidote administered to Hakjun Choi as a condition of his joining. Framed as a loyalty demonstration, show the new recruit that the guild takes care of its people. Dong-yong doesn't want to do this, but the optics of refusing in front of someone he's trying to recruit are bad. He makes the call. Hakjun gets the antidote. Soo-hyun uses the next Cheryl charge on Hakjun directly, burning out the residual poison that the antidote hasn't reached. Hakjun's system clears completely. Then Soo-hyun passes the final Cheryl charge to Hakjun with specific instructions. Go to the hospital, use this on Yuan after the antidote has been administered to her as well. He walks back into Dong-yong's office. The guildmaster is sitting behind his desk. He's running numbers on the interaction and not liking the results. A hunter who knows enough to demand a specific medical favor as a joining condition, who arrived already knowing about Hakjun's situation, this is not a standard recruitment. The picture is assembling into something that looks less like an opportunity and more like a trap. Soo-hyun sits down across from him again. He explains, with the calm of someone describing a weather forecast, that he has copied Dong-yong's poison compound via transmutation. He explains that he can now synthesize it himself. He explains that he has already done so during the course of their meeting and introduced it into Dongyong's system through the handshake contact. Dongyong reaches for the forearm mechanism. Soo-hyun tells him it won't work. The compound he introduced isn't the same as the external poison Dongyong uses on his targets. It's a modified version, synthesized using Transmutation's modification function, that his external antidote isn't calibrated to neutralize. He'll need to develop a new one. That will take time he doesn't have. The poison starts working. Dongyong has spent years watching other people experience what his poison does to a body. He's watched hunters beg. He's watched people he owned completely lose control of their muscles and their dignity and their will. He has a clinical, comfortable distance from the suffering he causes because he has never been on the receiving end of it. That distance closes very quickly. He makes it to the window. That's as far as he gets. The combination of the poison's effects and the sheer drop below the window is the last set of choices Dongyong ever makes. He goes through it. The guild hall catches fire on the way out. Holy flames burn clean and hot. And Ares Guild's operational infrastructure, its records, its contracts, its leverage files, its poison stockpile, burns with it. Soo-hyun walks out of the building before the fire department arrives and doesn't look back. Hak-jun is at the hospital when his phone shows him the news report about the Ares Guild headquarters. He looks at the screen for a long time. Then he goes in to see Yuin, who is already showing color in her face that wasn't there this morning. The association, predictably, wants to talk to Soo-hyun about several things simultaneously. The Anyang incident, the Ares Guild fire, the unregistered S-rank mana readings coming off the Anyang battle data, and the general pattern of a C-rank hunter being involved in multiple major incidents across multiple cities. Gyungtaek in particular wants to bury him. The evacuation of Anyang City saved 600,000 lives, which is wonderful, but it also exposes the fact that those lives were in danger because the association sat on the instability warnings. If Soo-hyun is positioned as a hero, the next question is why the association wasn't the one doing this. That question leads directly to Gyungtaek's desk. Soo-hyun plays the recording. He has audio of Gyungtaek's internal communications. The conversations where the director explicitly acknowledged the Anyang instability data and explicitly chose to suppress it. He plays it in the meeting. Not loudly, not dramatically, just places his phone on the table and presses play. The room gets very quiet. Gyungtaek makes some calculations. The recording in Soo-hyun's possession, released publicly, ends his career and potentially results in criminal liability. The recording staying private requires that Soo-hyun get what he wants, which is full clearance for all dungeons he wants access to, no interference with his operations, and a formal acknowledgement that the Anyang incident is classified as a successful crisis response rather than a terrorist event. Gyungtaek agrees to all of it. Do-hui Kim, the association's associate director, a sharp, rational A-rank official who has been watching this meeting with the expression of someone watching a chess grandmaster dismantle a beginner, says nothing during the negotiation. Afterward, she finds Soo-hyun in the hallway. She tells him she's going to remember this. Not as a threat, as a fact. He tells her he's counting on it. The S-rank examination facility is the most controlled environment the association operates. Not a dungeon, not a tower floor, a purpose-built testing ground where artificial combat scenarios replicate high-tier monster encounters in contained conditions. The machines run simulations calibrated to push A-rank hunters to their absolute limit. S-rank candidates are expected to struggle. Most don't pass on the first attempt. The ones who do are remembered. Soo-hyun walks in with a beast egg in his inventory and breaks every record the facility has on file. The simulation sequences are designed to escalate, start manageable, layer in complexity, push toward a ceiling that most candidates hit somewhere in the middle tiers. Soo-hyun doesn't hit a ceiling. He moves through the early sequences faster than the machines can recalibrate, clearing each scenario before the difficulty adjustment fully deploys. The evaluators watching the readouts start exchanging looks somewhere around the third sequence. By the fifth, someone has gone to get the senior staff. Then the simulation generates Fafnir, not the real one, an artificial construct based on recorded data, mana signature, attack patterns, physical parameters assembled from whatever observational records exist of the monster sovereign. The machine produces it as the capstone scenario, reserved for candidates who clear everything else. The ultimate stress test, the thing that's supposed to be impossible to defeat, so that the machine can measure exactly how a candidate responds to genuine hopelessness. Soo-hyun has fought Fafnir before. He died doing it. The memory lives in his body, in his reflexes, in the particular way his hands move when they recognize a specific attack pattern. The artificial version isn't the real thing. It's missing the weight, the presence, the full-dimensional horror of the actual creature, but the pattern recognition fires anyway. He kills it. The simulation Fafnir, the thing that's supposed to be unkillable in testing conditions, goes down. The facility is completely silent, and then the beast egg hatches. It's been reacting for days. Subtle vibrations, temperature fluctuations, the occasional pulse of mana that Soo-hyun could feel through his inventory. The Floor 10 hidden reward, carried through floors and cities and guild halls and hospital visits, has been waiting for the right moment. The S-rank mana density in the testing facility, combined with the resonance of the Fafnir encounter's energy signature, apparently constitutes the right moment. The egg cracks. Then it opens. Mir is small. Newborns usually are. Even divine dragon newborns. The creature that climbs out of the shell is compact, iridescent, with scales that shift color depending on the angle of light, and eyes that are already tracking Soo-hyun, with an awareness that no newborn animal should have. It orients to him immediately. Not because he's the first thing it sees, but because the bond is already there, formed through months of proximity, the mana exchange of carrying the egg through tower floors, the accumulated connection of someone who didn't know exactly what they were carrying, but chose to carry it carefully anyway. Mir makes a sound. It's not a roar, it's smaller than that. More like a question. Soo-hyun holds out his hand. Mir steps onto it and promptly begins investigating his fingers with the focused intensity of someone conducting serious research. Hyung Yi-song is in the testing facility, S-rank Beastmaster, one of the most powerful awakened fighters currently registered in South Korea, and the owner of a fully grown adult dragon companion that he has raised and bonded since its hatchling stage. He came to observe the examination as a professional courtesy. S-rank assessments occasionally draw senior awakeners who want to evaluate potential colleagues. His dragon reacts before he does. The fully grown creature, massive, mature, radiating the kind of mana density that comes from decades of growth, turns toward the newly hatched Mir and bows. Not in the playful way animals sometimes lower their heads. A full, deliberate, deep bow. The posture of something that recognizes a hierarchical superior and is responding to it the way its nature demands. Hyung Yi-song stares at his dragon. His dragon continues bowing. He looks at the tiny iridescent creature sitting on Soo-hyun's hand, investigating his fingers. He introduces himself. The friendship that begins in that testing room is uncomplicated in the way that genuine respect between competent people tends to be. Hyung Yi doesn't interrogate Soo-hyun about what he is or where he came from. He simply recalibrates around the new information, that there is a divine dragon in the world, that it has bonded to this specific person, and that this changes the strategic landscape in ways worth paying attention to. He's the kind of man who processes information and updates his position rather than defending the position he started with. Soo-hyun appreciates this. He adds Hyung Yi to the list of people he doesn't have to manage. Mir, for his part, spends the first week of his existence demanding food, attempting to breathe fire with the consistency of a very small, very enthusiastic blowtorch, and falling asleep on Soo-hyun's shoulder with the air of someone who has decided this is simply where sleeping happens now. The divine dragon's blessing activates as the bond formalizes, a passive amplification of Soo-hyun's mana density and tracking capability, plus access to Mir's own sensory range, which is, even at this size, substantially beyond human baseline. Mir can smell things through walls. He can feel mana signatures at distances that instruments would struggle to register, and he has very strong opinions about which of Soo-hyun's allies smell trustworthy, which opinion he expresses by either climbing toward them or producing a tiny warning smoke from his nostrils. He produces no warning smoke around Juho or Hakjun. He produces an enormous amount of warning smoke around every association official who comes to visit. The visit from Jeon Park doesn't involve a phone call or an appointment or any of the normal social protocols. Soo-hyun comes home one evening to find her in his apartment. Not having broken in dramatically, she's simply there, sitting at his table, with the patient stillness of someone who has spent years moving through spaces without being noticed, and has decided this time to be noticed. Jeon Park, master of the Reaper Guild, S-rank assassin. The only survivor of a massacre that the Detritus Guild carried out on her party 4 years ago, in which her comrades were killed and her partner Ki-hoon died shielding her from the killing blow. She has spent the 4 years since operating as one of the most effective awakened hunters in South Korea, while simultaneously running a private war against Detritus that has cost the syndicate significant personnel and resources, but hasn't reached the leadership. She is here because she has been tracking the Anyang incident, the Ares Guild fire, and the S-rank examination results, and has assembled a picture of Soo-hyun that is more accurate than anyone else's. She wants to see the Detritus brand, or specifically, she wants to confirm he doesn't have one. Soo-hyun shows her his collarbone, his arms, his back. No brand. She examines the absence with the focused attention of someone for whom this confirmation is genuinely high stakes. Then he tells her he knows about Ki-hoon. She goes very still. He explains, carefully, without pushing into anything she hasn't already chosen to share, that he has information about Detritus's structure, its leadership, and its planned operations. That the guild's actual head is not any of the executive-level operatives she's been working her way toward. It's Jianfang Huang, a name most people know from entertainment media, a celebrated actor, publicly beloved, privately the architect of one of the most sophisticated criminal awakened syndicates in the world. His ability to shift his identity and appearance at will has kept him invisible to every investigation that's gotten close. Jeon's expression doesn't change much, but something behind her eyes does. She asks how he knows this. He tells her he's been preparing for this specific fight for a long time, and that he can't take Detritus apart alone, not because he lacks the power, but because some parts of this need to be done by someone with the right to do them. He looks at her when he says it. She understands what he means. The final blow against the person who murdered Ki-hoon belongs to her, not as a tactical allocation, as a matter of what's right. She extends her hand. He shakes it. The Reaper Guild and whatever Soo-hyun is operating as are now coordinated. The intelligence coming in from multiple sources, including Detritus-adjacent channels that Jeon has been monitoring and the future timeline knowledge Soo-hyun carries, confirms the Syndicate's next major operation, a simultaneous 5-nation strike timed around the world's first Blue Dungeon emergence. Blue tier is the top of the color scale for dungeon classification, rare, enormous, continental, and potential damage radius. The Blue Dungeon appearing in Los Angeles is an event that every major guild in the world wants a piece of, because the resources inside a blue-tier dungeon are genuinely civilization-altering. Detritus intends to use the raid as cover, embed operatives in the assault team, allow the dungeon to destabilize catastrophically, and use the resulting outbreak to eliminate rival S-rank hunters, while the world's attention is locked on the disaster. Soo-hyun is going to Los Angeles. The flight over is spent with Mir trying to understand airplane windows and Juho trying to understand Mir, while Hakjun watches both of them with the quiet amusement of someone who has recently had every reason to be miserable and is finding that he isn't. Yuan's color has been good for 3 weeks. The poison is gone. The weight that's been on Hakjun since before Soo-hyun met him in this timeline is lifting visibly, and what's underneath it turns out to be someone with a sharp sense of humor and a completely unreasonable level of skill for his age. Los Angeles greets them with the particular energy of a city that knows something enormous is happening and hasn't decided yet whether to be terrified or excited. The Blue Dungeon portal sits offshore, visible from the coast, a spatial distortion the size of a cargo ship. Every major American guild has mobilized. International teams have flown in from across Asia and Europe. The logistical organization of who leads the raid, who controls resource distribution, and who gets priority access to the dungeon's interior is the subject of 17 simultaneous negotiations. Robert Williams runs the dominant American guild and has positioned himself as the default raid authority through a combination of financial leverage, political connections, and the kind of aggressive networking that functions as a substitute for actual tactical competence. He's not incompetent in combat. He's simply a man who prioritizes asset accumulation over everything else, which makes him exactly the wrong person to lead a Blue Dungeon raid when the downside of failure is a continental outbreak. Soo-hyun acquires raid authority through the mechanism of being the person in the room who actually understands what they're walking into. It's not a fight, it's a systematic demonstration during the pre-raid briefing that Robert's operational plan has 3 critical structural failures, any one of which would result in catastrophic dungeon collapse. He explains each failure calmly, explains the correct alternative, and does so in front of the assembled raid leadership. Robert can dispute the conclusions or accept the correction. Disputing requires him to be right, which he isn't. Soo-hyun takes point. The raid goes in. Blue Dungeon interior is a different scale. The space is vast, not in the way that large dungeons are sometimes large, but architecturally vast, like the dungeon was built to contain something that needed room. The monster density is high and varied. The environmental hazards are active rather than passive, and the mana saturation makes reading the space difficult. The combined raid force, multiple guilds, international teams, S-rank fighters working in uncomfortable coordination, advances in formation. The betrayal comes at the deep point. Chloe Rafferty is the master of Star Guild and a detritus executive. Her ability set runs dual elemental, fire and ice, a rare combination that allows her to shift between offense types mid-combat and exploit thermal differential as a weapon. She's been cooperative and professional through the initial dungeon advance. At the deep point, where extraction becomes complicated and the raid force is maximally committed, she stops being cooperative. Her opening move is to trigger a dungeon destabilization sequence, a specific combination of ability applications that pushes the blue dungeon's internal mana toward outbreak conditions. It's not subtle once it starts. The dungeon's walls begin vibrating, the monster population surges toward the raid force from all directions, and Chloe is burning outward rather than helping contain. Mac River moves simultaneously. Detritus's high-speed assassin executive, a fighter whose primary ability is velocity, moving at speeds that make conventional reaction time irrelevant, launches from concealment toward the exposed rear of the raid group. He's aiming for Jordan Rogers, the leader of Maximum Guild, the largest American guild not affiliated with Robert Williams. Eliminating Jordan in the chaos of an outbreak removes the one Western guild leader capable of organizing resistance. He doesn't reach Jordan. Soo-hyun intercepts him at the apex of his movement arc, the moment of maximum velocity where the momentum is committed and the trajectory can't be adjusted. He reads the launch vector, cuts the angle, and meets Mac River in the air. The assassin has time to register that someone matched his movement speed before the impact. The exchange is brief. Mac River is fast. Soo-hyun is fast, and has 20 years of experience reading exactly this type of fighter. The blade work is decisive. Mac River doesn't land on Jordan Rogers. Chloe's ice defenses are extensive, layered barriers that she's been building since the betrayal started, a fortified position in the center of the dungeon outbreak she's triggering. She's not planning to survive the dungeon herself, she's planning to maximize damage and extract through a secondary portal her team embedded before the raid. The fire abilities handle the monsters pressing from one direction, while the ice barriers handle the raid force from the other. Soo-hyun burns through the ice with holy flames. Sacred fire and ice elemental constructs are not a balanced matchup. The Cheryl-derived flame energy doesn't care about elemental opposition. It burns through the ice barriers the way a welding torch goes through paper, layer by layer, until Chloe's defensive architecture is gone, and she's standing in open dungeon space with a surging monster horde on 3 sides and Soo-hyun on the 4th. She makes a calculation. The extraction portal is still accessible if she runs now. She runs. Jordan Rogers, watching this from behind his guild's defensive formation, sees the detritus ice defenses collapse and the high-speed assassin's body on the floor, and makes his own calculation rapidly. Soo-hyun turns to him, tells him plainly, the dungeon is still destabilizing, the outbreak has started, there are approximately 300 monsters between the raid force and the boss, and winning this requires everyone in the dungeon working together right now. He asks Jordan if Maximum Guild is in. Jordan looks at him for exactly 2 seconds. Then he starts giving orders to his people. The horde is massive, 300 monsters across a blue dungeon environment with the space to spread and flank and layer attacks in 3 dimensions, is a logistical nightmare for a raid force that's already been partially destabilized by Chloe's opening move. Soo-hyun doesn't fight it the way you fight a manageable encounter. He fights it the way you fight a disaster, constantly moving, constantly redirecting, burning lines through the horde with holy flames and phoenix air support, while Graham handles anything that gets through the fire. The immortality trait triggers again. Somewhere in the middle of the horde engagement, something big and fast hits him hard enough to crack the divine armor and drive his health past the critical threshold. The trait fires. He keeps going. The monster that hit him has time to be confused before he returns the attention. The boss signature activates at the far end of the dungeon space. A troll druid. Not visually, the creature has disguised itself in the dungeon's ambient mana, presenting as part of the environmental structure rather than a distinct entity. It's been manipulating the monster behavior from concealment, directing the horde's movements, accelerating the dungeon destabilization. In its natural form, it's massive, with druidic abilities that operate on the dungeon environment itself, reshaping terrain, accelerating growth, controlling the organic elements of the dungeon ecosystem. Soo-hyun finds the concealment. Graham resonates with the disguise's mana structure. The dragon-slaying blade's Etherstone core is sensitive to sophisticated mana constructs, and the Troll Druid's disguise reads as exactly the kind of layered mana architecture that makes the blade's resonance function kick in. He drives through the disguise layer and hits the creature at its core. The Troll Druid drops its concealment, and the fight goes loud. It's the longest single combat of the Los Angeles operation. The creature's terrain manipulation means the battlefield keeps changing, the organic dungeon environment reshaping itself to create barriers and attack vectors simultaneously. Soo-hyun adapts faster than the terrain can shift. Mir, writing the updated sensory link, tracks the dungeon's mana flows and feeds Soo-hyun advance warning on reshaping events through their bond. A half-second of foreknowledge that is the difference between being caught in a dungeon wall and not. The immortality trait fires a second time in this fight. He notes this with mild interest and finishes the engagement. The Troll Druid dies. The dungeon stabilizes. The outbreak stops. Jordan Rogers is standing in the dungeon's exit zone when Soo-hyun walks out. He has the expression of someone who has just recategorized a significant amount of his prior understanding of what's possible. Chloe Rafferty is in U.S. federal custody. She tried to reach the extraction portal and found Ji-on's advance team waiting at it. Her dual-element abilities were impressive. Ji-on's team had been briefed extensively on her ability parameters and had prepared accordingly. The custody transfer to American Awakened Law Enforcement is clean and documented. The detritus network is already fracturing. Ji-on's people have been moving against multiple detritus cells simultaneously. The coordinated intelligence that Soo-hyun provided, cross-referenced with her 4 years of operational knowledge, gives them enough to hit multiple nodes at once before the organization can collapse inward and hide. The cells that don't go down immediately start going quiet, dissolving, people cutting contact with the central network as fast as they can once it becomes clear that the umbrella is collapsing. Jianfang Huang knows the umbrella is collapsing. He's been watching the operational reports and doing the same math everyone else is doing. The difference is that he has options they don't. His headquarters is in Los Angeles, a facility concealed behind the entertainment industry infrastructure he's built over decades, layered under production companies and distribution networks and the general administrative complexity of a successful celebrity's business empire. He's been planning an exit strategy for exactly this scenario. What he hasn't planned for is Soo-hyun and Ji-on arriving before the exit can be executed. Ji-on moves through the headquarters facility like she's walked it before. She hasn't, but she's studied the architectural schematics from detritus intelligence files for years, modified by operational updates from Soo-hyun's timeline knowledge. She knows where he'll be. Jianfang Huang's ability is identity transformation, a deep physical and mana-level shape-shifting that allows him to perfectly replicate the appearance, voice, and surface mana signature of any individual he's observed. It's how he's hidden for decades. When cornered, he uses it offensively. He shifts into forms of people his opponents have emotional connections to, disrupting combat psychology at the moments it matters most. He shifts into Ki-hoon. Ji-on stops. The shape in front of her has Ki-hoon's face, Ki-hoon's voice, Ki-hoon's posture, assembled from Jianfang's observation of the man he arranged to have killed. He uses it precisely, hitting the emotional register that 4 years of grief has kept perfectly preserved. The mimicry is good enough that for 2 seconds, something in Ji-on's face fractures. Then it closes. She's spent 4 years hunting this man. She's spent 4 years knowing that the person who killed Ki-hoon was still alive and operational. The grief is real. The love was real. But grief and love don't make the fake version of someone real, and she has been a survivor long enough to know the difference between the past she carries and the present in front of her. She moves. Soo-hyun has broken Jianfang's dragon humanoid transformation by the time she gets there. The dragon aspect of the ability, when activated, provides a massive defensive boost, and Graham is specifically designed to cut through it. The Ether Stone blade finds the draconic mana concentration at Jianfang's core and severs the transformation's foundation. The dragon scales dissolve. What's left is a person who has been untouchable for decades, discovering what it feels like to be touchable. Jian lands the final blow. She doesn't make a speech. She doesn't explain herself to him. She just completes what she came to do, with the economy of someone who has been planning this for 4 years and finds that the actual moment requires nothing more than the action itself. Jianfang Huang, celebrity, actor, architect of a global criminal syndicate, dies in the ruins of his own headquarters. The exposure hits every major news outlet within hours. Detritus Guild's infrastructure, its membership lists, its operational history. Jian's team has been packaging the intelligence alongside the raid and releases it simultaneously with the headquarters takedown. The scale of what Detritus was is staggering from the outside. How many governments it had penetrated, how many guilds it had corrupted, how many disasters it had engineered or exploited. The international awakened community spends a week in the particular state of shock that comes from realizing how much was happening underneath the surface of things they thought they understood. Soo-hyun spends that week in a Los Angeles hospital bed. The accumulated damage from the Blue Dungeon Horde, the Troll Druid fight, and the headquarters operation has finally caught up with him in the way that suppressed injury always does. The adrenaline fades, and the body presents its bill. Nothing catastrophic. The immortality trait has prevented anything irreversible. But catastrophic and painful are different categories, and the hospital staff has opinions about the number of healed-over fractures showing up on the imaging. He wakes up to find Joo-ho and Hak-jun sitting at his bedside. They've been there for a while, apparently. Long enough to get bored. Long enough that Hak-jun has acquired markers from somewhere and has been using Soo-hyun's unconscious face as a canvas for detailed editorial commentary. Joo-ho has been watching this happen and apparently encouraging it because there are contributions that match his handwriting. Soo-hyun opens his eyes, looks at the ceiling, becomes gradually aware that his face feels different in some specific ways. He reaches up and feels the marker lines. Joo-ho holds up a phone with the camera showing his reflection. Someone has given him a very thorough artistic evaluation. The commentary is detailed and not entirely flattering. He looks at this for a moment. He doesn't have a word for what he's feeling, but it's something in the vicinity of, this is what it was supposed to be. Not the world-ending battles, not the solitary grinding, not the weight of being the last person standing on a dead planet. This. 2 people who chose to be here, who could have been anywhere else, drawing on his face because they were bored, and assumed he'd eventually wake up and be annoyed about it. He puts the phone down. Joo-ho asks how he's feeling. He says fine. Hak-jun asks if he noticed anything different about his face. He says he hadn't, and watches Hak-jun's expression do something between disappointed and suspicious. His mother arrives an hour later with food she made herself and the particular energy of a person who has been very worried and is expressing it through volume of cooking. Mir, who has been staying with Joo-ho during the hospital stay, launches off Joo-ho's shoulder and makes his way to Soo-hyun's bed with the urgency of someone who has very important dragon business to conduct immediately. Jian leaves a note. Not a visit. A note, slipped under the door of his room. It says, in the economical phrasing of someone who chooses their words carefully, thank you. It says, the debt is paid. It says nothing else, because nothing else needs saying. He folds it and keeps it. The world is not fixed. Detritus is gone, but the structures it exploited aren't, and the gaps it filled are going to attract things trying to fill them. The association is functional, but compromised. Gyeongtaek's tenure visibly strained by the Anyang revelations. The tower keeps generating new floors, new trials, new powers for the people who can take them. The dungeons keep appearing, the mana density on Earth keeps rising, and somewhere in the future timeline that Soo-hyun carries in his memory, there are disasters he hasn't reached yet. He knows this. He's already planning. What he didn't have in the previous timeline, and what he has now, is people. Real ones. Joo-ho, who treats his party members as people worth keeping alive. Hakjun, whose talent is finally free to grow without the weight of Dongyong's hooks in it. Yuun, healing steadily and with the quiet warmth of someone who understands that she was fought for. Daiho Kim, who will make whatever weapon comes next with the same unhurried excellence he brought to Graham. Do-hui Kim, who is watching the association and thinking. Hyung Yi-song, whose dragon still bows to Mir. Ji-an, somewhere in the city, carrying less than she was. His mother, who makes too much food and asks too many questions, and threw herself in front of a monster, for someone she loves, without calculating whether it was worth it. Mir finds a comfortable position on the pillow next to his head, and makes the small sound that has become recognizable as his settling-in noise, the dragon equivalent of deciding that this is fine, this is where we are, this is enough. Soo-hyun stares at the ceiling of a Los Angeles hospital room and thinks about the next 20 years. He has plans for all of it. What he doesn't have is knowledge of what Gordon is planning. The Etherstone-powered aircraft is a symbol, not of combat power, but of the kind of resources that make combat power feel like a detail. The interior is designed to communicate that whoever sits in it operates at a level where national governments are logistical considerations rather than authorities. Gordon sits in that interior and looks comfortable. He's S-rank. Genuinely, not the kind of S-rank that gets assigned by machines measuring mana output in controlled conditions, but the kind that gets built through enough dangerous encounters that the body and mana system have adapted to constant high-tier stress. He's powerful, he's aware of it, and he has spent enough time at that power level to have developed the particular arrogance that comes from being the strongest person in every room he's ever walked into. Until recently, that math was comfortable. The global S-rank population is small, the known legends are a fixed quantity, and Gordon's position in the hierarchy has been stable. Then Los Angeles happened. The Blue Dungeon raid, the takedown of detritus, the S-rank examination records, a masked fighter who walked out of a half-dragon and then flew to the other side of the world and dismantled a global criminal network in a single operation. Gordon has been watching. He's done his assessment. He doesn't like the result. His solution is a ranking game, a structured, global competition designed to force every significant S-rank awakener into direct conflict under conditions that establish a definitive hierarchy. Not an official tournament, something more absolute, a game where the losers stop being threats and where the winner takes the position that Gordon believes should already be his. He says this to the interior of the aircraft with the calm of someone announcing a business decision. Outside the windows, the cloud layer scrolls past at altitude. The Etherstone drive hums. Somewhere below, in the city they've just left, a man in a hospital bed is drawing up plans for the next 2 decades. Gordon doesn't know his name yet. He will.